This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time!
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah!
I finished these fights.
Give me a hell yeah!
Top Rope Nation.
Learn to love it. It's the best thing going today.
What's up, guys? This is Ryan Drosty, the host who ain't afraid to boast, and this is Top Rope Nation, the best pro wrestling podcast on the internet. If you're a longtime listener, thanks for joining us here this week. If you've never listened to the show before, we think you'll like what you hear. Stay with us here. We're going to talk about all the biggest news in pro wrestling this week, give our reactions to the WWE roster shakeup. We're going to talk the JBL bullying story, and also the Roman Reigns, Braun Strowman angle that everyone's talking about from Monday night. But first of all, I need to introduce my co-hosts. So starting out here, by the way, this is episode number 34 of Top Rope Nation. I went back and actually counted so I could throw that out there this week. Is Mr. Kyle Ross. Kyle has been with the show since the second episode back on August 4th. He is got one of the best minds, I believe, not to get him too excited here. One of the best minds about the wrestling industry. If you read his WWE SmackDown Live reports on TopRopePress.com, you'll learn something new. He's got great insight. Kyle, what's going on tonight?
I don't know. I guess I have a lot of great insight. That's what's going on. That's what I've been saying all along.
Well, I got to compliment you guys because I felt like after our show last week where we were debating Roman Reigns, I felt like I was kind of a jerk to you guys when we disagreed. So,
I mean, you were wrong a lot. I'm not.
Hey, I got to say, I'm getting closer and closer to jumping aboard the Roman Reigns train.
By the way,
this week was closer.
You know what was so great?
What?
And I'd thought about it more. I was like, man, what was he thinking? Like thinking it's not like, it's fine, like thinking that you can't compare the two. Like, yes, Reigns may compare not favorably to Cena, but you absolutely have to compare them. And you know what was great? I'd kind of forgotten about the whole debate for a couple days. And then Abby in, I forgot what it was her Raw preview said, you know, Reigns is to me is John Cena 2.0. And I said, thank you. Abby. There we go.
You know, our listeners might not know what you're talking about because me and Kyle went on for like literally almost 20 minutes debating this Roman Reigns.
And it was uncomfortable for Justin because while we were debating, I would look at Justin in the camera and he's like, so...
He was watching an NBA game. I could tell he was looking elsewhere. I actually cut a lot of that from the show. So the only people that actually probably heard that were our Patreon supporters that were watching the show live. If you see the Patreon exclusive version of last week's show, you can see the whole debate. I cut it from the webcast that I posted for everyone and the podcast. There's some of it was left in, but I cut like 15 minutes out. So if you guys want to see the unedited live versions of our shows every week, that's a good segue. Head on over to patreon.com/topropenation. You can get access for $1 a month or whatever you want to give to the show. And you can see me and Kyle argue about topics like Roman Reigns. So Kyle, I got to say, thanks for putting up with me since episode 2 of Top Rope Nation. I appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. And I'll tell you what, this is easily of the 33 episodes. I haven't been a part of all of them. So I should.
You were absent for a few when Justin first.
A few, but yeah, I mean, of the 25 plus episodes I've been a part of, clearly the best dressed I've ever been tonight.
He's rocking the blazer. He looks like he's out on the town, like there, downtown.
This is the first time I'm wearing even respectable clothing on this. I mean, a few of these I haven't even worn pants.
And again, you can see that live on the Patreon only.
You can't, ladies. You can't. No matter how much you donate to Patreon, you will not. You'll just have to take my word that I'm not wearing pants. You will not be able to get a under the desk view, no matter how much you donate.
We'll see about that. We'll see when the donations come in.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
No, I really mean that, Kyle. Though your SmackDown reviews, your news posts, and Top Rope Press, your feature stories, good insight in the wrestling industry. Kyle's been a fan for a long time.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And my other
can alienate this week.
My other co-host here, he's been putting up with me since, I don't know, 2001 or so. We've been friends talking pro wrestling. He's one of the funniest wrestling minds out there, I think. He's written some features for Top Rope Press. You can look him up. Mr. Justin Joint. Justin, what's going on?
Hey, guys. I'm glad we were talking about our listeners earlier because I actually just want to thank all the smarks, the marks, humanoids, jabronis, and Johnny New Japans who tune in to listen to us ramble about the world's highest art form, pro graps. And just want them to know that if you send us a message on Twitter at TR Nation Podcast, there's like a 99% chance that we're going to get back to you, unless you're a troll or a bully.
Yeah. Speaking of bullying, guys, JBL, Mauro Ranallo. This has been the big story this week in pro wrestling. I know we all probably have some strong feelings on this, or maybe our feelings are strong just on JBL in general, more so than the bullying story. Maybe in Kyle's case, I don't know. But the general story, if you're not up to date, Mauro Ranallo looks to be done with WWE. And hey, this is a guy who he's been around MMA, boxing, pro wrestling now for a while. Highly acclaimed announcer coming into WWE from his work with New Japan on Access specifically. And he's on his way out. And some of that has to do, he does have some issues with depression, bipolar disorder. But it seems like some of that has come from the JBL influence lately on SmackDown and, some tension between the two. So I wanted to get what kind of takes you guys or hot takes you guys have on the story right now. A lot more
Hot takes
has been coming out lately about what's going down. I mean, what do you think about JBL? Should WWE part ways? Do you think they're going to actually part ways? Are they going to be a star here in this situation, Kyle?
I don't know. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, if it all depends on if the reaction gets more intense. The way things are, we don't know what exactly the catalyst was for this with Mauro. I mean, was it just, what's that show called? They're like PTI ripoff show they do on the network. I can't even think of the name of the show.
Bring It to the Table.
Yeah, I watched it. Like, okay, if that was all he did, that's probably not a fireable offense. We don't know exactly what he did, though. I mean, that's the whole key. Like, we know that, or we think we know that JBL was the impetus for Ranallo seemingly, quitting, his on-air role as the play-by-play guy of SmackDown. I will say, obviously he said, I do the reviews for the show every week. They had no chemistry whatsoever together. They clearly didn't get along. JBL has a history. We've heard a number of people come out in the past, I mean, if you take their word for it, that stuff's way worse than what JBL, would have said about Mauro with the Wrestling Observer retweet. But if the situation gets bad on WWE, JBL will be the fall guy. There's no real reason. It was funny in the Wrestling Observer newsletter. I was actually really glad to see Dave Meltzer make this comparison, because I had thought of it the previous day with Pat Patterson and what went down with him in 1992, and how Pat, kind of got the kayfabe firing. They said they fired him, but they never really did. He never really went away. He was helping book the company. Pat Patterson had real value to the WWE in terms of booking bars. JBL, it needs to be stated, at least this is an outsider, not someone who works for the company, obviously, but doesn't seem to have real value to the WWE. So there's no real reason to protect him. That's my thing. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, again, there is nothing that he has done. I mean, the history, the pattern of behavior, and which has been encouraged apparently, is not good. But, with this specific incident with Mauro, there's been nothing that's come out that's like, okay, he's got to go because of that. But if the heat gets turned up, I've got to say this, there's no reason to protect JBL. Would you guys agree with that? Like, I don't think JBL is someone, he's not even like a Jesse Ventura in the late 80s, like in the announcer role. He doesn't even have that value. So could I see him being the one that falls on the sword? Yeah, absolutely. Will it happen? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's
with Kyle.
Gag order with Mauro, so I don't know. I mean, WWE just wants the situation to go away. I don't know if it will, though. I mean, Deadspin's had a couple pieces on it this week, and I don't know.
Yeah, I'm with Kyle in that I take hearsay with a grain of salt. I'm not going to rush to judgments unless I got the facts kind of laid out. I think JBL for outsiders has a history of bullying, and bullying is definitely wrong, especially when your company is an activist against it. Having said that, I do 100% think JBL needs to go, but that's only because I think he's an atrocious announcer.
See, I don't think he's a bad announcer. I just think, I mean, I will say he has done, you know, again, if the thing he did, what's the show called again? I already forgot what you said it was.
Bring it to the table.
Yeah.
Bring it.
Mamma mia, Kyle.
Yeah. Very good. If the bring it to the table was the big impetus for this whole thing, JBL's done a lot worse shit than that in his career. I mean, this guy freaking goose stepped in Germany. For God's sake.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
I mean, goose stepped in Germany. I mean, that's really heinous.
It's actually a crime in Germany.
It is.
They had to pull some strings to get out of that one.
Yeah. And I mean, and some of the bullying stories that have come out with other guys, you know, the stuff that Justin Roberts has wrote about. I mean, that's another thing that's really turned the heat up on JBL too. We need to talk about. It's not just Mauro. That this story coinciding with the release of Justin Roberts' book is really what's painted JBL in a bad light. And I mean, you know, I don't know JBL. I mean, he seems on the surface kind of like a dick, but I don't know that. I mean, you know, I don't know the man. I've never met him. I never will meet him. So, yeah, I'm not going to rush to judgment. But, you know, again, I don't see – I mean, if the pattern's there and it turns into a public relations nightmare, then, you know, he's got to go. But that – you know, if JBL does get fired, that doesn't – fix the problem once and for all, because there is the issue of, well, why is JBL doing this? Is he just some asshole on his own doing this? Probably not. You know, I mean, there's a lot of stories that he's kind of, you know, been encouraged from above. And that is an issue that's got to be fixed. I mean, just getting rid of JBL wouldn't fix that. I mean, it's got to be kind of, I mean, I get that what this business used to be, but it, you know, there's a lot of things that used to be stuff, and you evolve, you change. I mean, like Kevin Nash. Did you read these comments today? Kevin Nash, who somehow has earned the reputation as one of the great minds of wrestling. Kevin Nash is the opposite of one of the great minds of this industry. He's one of the worst minds of this industry.
Look at 1999 WCW booking when he was
like
in the
Kevin
booking
Nash
room.
had a great mind. So like people are like, oh, you know, don't be a bitch. That's what Kevin Nash said. Like really, and like Eric Bischoff, there's another guy who I could give two shits what he has to say on this. I was never bullied. Congratulations, E. You know, I mean, wow. So it's a mentality that has to be weeded out, and it didn't start with JBL, and it won't end with JBL probably. But you know, WWE is a lot better than it used to be. I mean, the stories that you used to hear and that are celebrated, quite frankly, by a lot of fans that you hear, like on DVD releases and stuff. You know, it's a different industry now. You talk to people who work in the company. You know, there's no Ric Flairs that work for this company now. These guys take great care of their body. I mean, nobody's taking private jets to Vegas every weekend and getting shit-faced. You know, I mean, Ric Flair could probably drink the current roster all under the table.
I'm sure he does. Did you see he got kicked out of a bar recently?
Yes, he did, and I heard it. And you know, I got wind at WrestleMania weekend. He was drinking people under the table too.
There's a lot of people that have had some hot takes on this story. I saw one the other day from Smith Hart. I just pulled it up.
Geez, him again, not Smith Hart. Haven't we had enough hot takes?
he said, you know, actually, you know, Smith is in some poor health, so I wished him well in that regard.
Okay.
But his Twitter account, he said, to those in the business today that think that JBL is a bully, I would have hated to see how you handled Kurt Hennig, Fuji, or Valentine. Now, again, like, you can't compare modern day to like how things were years and years ago. That's like saying, like, for all you women out there that think you deserve all these rights and stuff, I would have hated to see how you acted before women had the right to vote in 1920.
Yes.
You know, like, no, it's not the way things work anymore.
Yes.
So I thought that was a pretty poor take as well.
Yes. That's the whole thing. It's like you can't, like, yes, okay, things, and you know, I live in Cleveland, and people are like, oh, you know, just now that everyone's bitching about Chief Wahoo. It's like, you know, society evolves, you know, and just because something was tolerated 10, 15, 20, 50 years ago doesn't mean it should be tolerated today. So, I mean, and that's the case with bullying. I mean, people like, to some people, they're like, what the hell, man? It's just all in good fun, and it's like, yeah, not really.
Yeah.
If the stuff that he said to Rene Dupree is true, that's pretty terrible. I mean, maybe there was a time period where it was kind of funny, but it's you read it now, it's like, Jesus, that's horrible.
Refresh our listeners on that one. What did he say to Rene Dupree?
He called him a French faggot, apparently, a lot.
Oh, yeah. And yeah.
Like,
in this day and age, to even use that word is pretty bad.
Yes. Like, I mean, you hear that now, and it's like, I mean,
I don't think I've heard anyone use that term since like middle school.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm 37 years old. I'm going to say, like, yeah, I'm not going to lie. I used to hear that term a lot more, but now it's like no one says that anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they do, but no one that I associate with.
One thing I was going to say, Kyle, you said you don't know JBL, you don't know what he's like. Well, I will tell you one thing. If you disagree with him, he will block you in an instant on Twitter. You've been found that recently. I recently found out that JBL blocked me over a year ago. Had no idea. I've only tweeted to him like one time, and apparently I got blocked like a year ago.
Man, Ryan was ahead of the curve.
Yeah, he had some weird take on like the government back. Actually, no, it's like 2 years ago. It was in 2014.
I will say this: like, he is bad.
Well, it wasn't even about like opinion. It was like he didn't even understand like the function of the executive branch. And all I did was say, well, what you said lost credibility because it's the job of the executive branch to enforce law or something like that. And he blocked me for that. So,
good.
But I think JBL, with these stories, I think they're accurate just because his track record says they're accurate. We've got, like you said, Justin Roberts talking about it in his book.
Right.
He's got no reason to lie.
If one person would say this, you're like, okay. But you're right. There is certainly, it's not just one person that's come out with this. I mean, I just brought up the name Rene Dupree. There was John Morrison that's come out, to kind of chime in on the passport story that Roberts mentioned in his book. I mean, who else is there? I mean, there's been a number of people.
Well, I've got a good one here on Steve Blackman that I want to talk about. So if you guys are longtime wrestling fans, you might remember Steve Blackman from the late 90s, the Attitude Era. Steve Blackman, the master of karate. Well, apparently, according to Bob Holly's biography. What's that?
Was he a master of karate? I don't know.
I don't know what style of karate. I don't remember.
Remember he came out of the crowd? Remember when they kept doing that? Both WWF and WCW, they kept doing those hideous angles where people would just come out of the crowd. You talk about something that, thank God, they don't do anymore because that just encourages unruly fan behavior.
Well, to mess with Steve Blackman, who was a legitimate tough guy, shows how dumb JBL was at the time. Because not only that, JBL is a tough guy. Did you guys ever see the Brawl for All? JBL got the crap knocked out of him in the Brawl for All by Bart Gunn, I believe.
He could probably kick my ass, but he wasn't. I mean, there's been tough for people in wrestling, sure.
All right, I wanted to talk about this section because it's relevant now. This book came out years ago, but Bob Holly wrote about the story about when he was traveling with Steve Blackman and JBL had tried to bully Steve Blackman. So hopefully I won't bore you guys, but I want to read this. I think you'll find it hilarious because when I read it recently, I have not read Bob Holly's book. I laughed pretty hard at this, so my best narration here. I'm going to read you the section from Bob Holly's book as quickly as I can. So he wrote, at the Kansas City airport, Steve Blackman and I were waiting around when Bradshaw came over. It was an early morning flight, and John was still drunk from the night before. He started patting Steve's butt. Steve said, John, I don't play that shit. Knock it off. John patted him again and again. Steve was getting brutally pissed. He told him, John, next time you do that, I'm going to knock your effing teeth out. So, of course, John did it again. Steve whipped around and backhanded Bradshaw, popping him with jabs in the face. John started swinging and missing, and his head was snapping back with each of Steve's jabs. Steve stepped back, planning to kick Bradshaw's knees out. We got his leg caught in a bag handle. Al Snow and I grabbed Steve. Ron Simmons grabbed John, and we pulled them apart. John was walking back and forth like a rooster looking to fight. Before he left, Steve told him, I'm going to effing kill you. He meant it, too. So we got out of our car and got on the road. Ken Shamrock was riding with us. Me, who's Bob Holly, Blackman. This is
quite the undercard 1999 WWE group here.
So this is Bob Holly, Blackman, and Shamrock. That's a dangerous car, and I'm the warm one, says Bob Holly. A teddy bear compared to the other two. That whole journey, Shamrock was poking and prodding Steve, telling him that Bradshaw was going to telling him that Bradshaw was going to beat his ass. Steve wasn't saying a word. And who did we see when we checked into the hotel? Bradshaw and Ron Simmons were right there. All right, almost done. The boys don't always stay at the same hotel, so it was a complete coincidence and not a good one for John. He came over to apologize, and Steve said, "No apologies, I'm going to finish you later," and walked off. We found him in the gym, still boiling mad. Once we were in the arena and had sat down and catering, John walked in. Everybody went silent as Steve stood up. He said, "If you got something to say to me, you say it now, or I'm going to finish you in front of everybody." Bradshaw walked over, apologized, and said, "I shouldn't have messed with you," and shook his hand. That was the end of it. Steve sat down and said, "Bob, if it wasn't for that bag, John would be in intensive care right now."
Wow.
So John backed down, John being John Layfield, JBL. I thought that was hilarious.
If Blackman doesn't know karate, he knows crazy.
Don't pat Steve Blackman on the ass, man.
Yeah. Wow.
Takeaway there.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, it's funny. I mean, here's the thing. So, like, they always say, like, what's the best way to combat a bully? Well, you just confront him. And the issue with it being endorsed is if guys are afraid of career repercussions. Like, that's where it's like a real problem inside WWE. If people are afraid, because it's cool for Blackman, maybe he just didn't give a shit what would happen, or, and again, that was a different era. If two guys got into a fight back then, I mean, that was just the way it was. But, like, if guys are afraid to confront JBL for fear of repercussion from the company, that's a major issue. That's actually that supersedes JBL, because JBL is essentially representing the company in that regard. And that's like, it's almost like, well, I can't respond because, then I would no longer be in good standing with WWE. So, I mean, that's the issue.
Yeah, I agree with you on your take that there's really nothing about JBL where, like, WWE couldn't part ways, at least for a while, with him. Like, they wouldn't suffer at all. His announcing has been...
Yeah, I mean, I just don't... What value does JBL have?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you're telling me that, like, I mean, if JBL wasn't on SmackDown ever again, that, like, that would be cause for you not to watch it?
Well, I mean, as a former wrestler... I mean, the things that he could add, if he's not a great announcer, which he's not, would be maybe he's like a mentor for the young guys. I don't think that's the case.
No,
I'm not sure.
I mean, yeah, I mean, and he's not a booker. I mean, Pat was a book. I mean, was a booker. JBL. I mean, he's just an announcer. I mean, so there's no need to protect him. But again, the issue is, okay, is JBL gone rogue on this, or is the behavior indeed encouraged from above? And if that's the case, then, I mean, that's a whole different issue. That's not a JBL issue. It's a company issue. And it probably is a company issue. It was an industry issue. I mean, that's why all these old guys, you talk about Kevin Nash, Smith Harder, saying all this stuff that, like, comes across as just dinosaurs talking. Because it's something that's gone on. And it's like, yeah, okay, it went on, but it doesn't mean it's okay in 2017. So, I don't know if, I mean, the question is it a JBL thing or is it a WWE thing? It's probably a little bit of both, truth be told. Yeah. The culture of wrestling, you put that many dudes, traveling together, close quarters, you're going to have this stuff from time to time. But does JBL individually take it too far? If you read the stories, it kind of seems like he does. You don't hear about this from too many other people.
Yeah. So we'll have to see how this shakes out. Next week's show, maybe we'll have some new information to talk about. But as of right now, it seems
who makes it longer in their role, JBL or Bill O'Reilly?
Oh my goodness, probably Bill O'Reilly, because he's like the biggest ratings draw on Fox News.
Say it'll take. Although what Bill O'Reilly did a little bit worse than JBL.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. But yeah, we'll see.
I hope they're both fired. There's somebody else too. I said there was three people. I gotta look up the text there.
While you're looking that up, the latest news is that WWE is working on a agreement with Mauro Ranallo to kind of like keep him quiet on this story, to kind of like try to settle the dust and everything that's been happening. So I guess they're trying to get a gag order on Mauro Ranallo, for lack of a better term. And
boy, that makes them look even worse.
Yeah, this was in the Observer this week that Meltzer reported that. So
It was Chief Wahoo that I also wanted gone, by the way.
oh yeah, and Kyle's an Indians fan, but man, that is a racist logo.
Yes, the racist Cleveland Indians logo. But yeah, that's bad. Like, and that's a bad. I mean, it's almost like an admission of guilt, right? Like,
yeah.
Okay, Mauro's gone. Mauro, tell us about what went wrong. Oh, I can't. I signed it. Well, I mean, what does that mean? That obviously means that WWE doesn't want something else. So it's bad. I mean, they know it's, they know it's bad and they're aware of it. And I don't know. I mean, they've had worse stories than this before and they've survived. But, not to be that guy, but, with this social media nowadays, it's a little tougher sometimes. This stuff doesn't go away quite as quickly as it used to.
That's for sure. I wanted to get to the roster shakeup. Before we get there, though, I just want to talk about that angle on Raw with Braun Strowman and Roman Reigns.
Well, this is a hard right turn.
What a tremendous individual.
Strongest man in the world. There is no doubt he did that without any gimmicks.
What a great segment, though. I mean, regardless. Braun Strowman, man. Talk about a guy who's improved in a year. And Roman Reigns, too. Hey, man, I'm sorry. I know we talked about it last week on the show. I'm getting closer and closer to jumping aboard the Roman Reigns train. Choo-choo! Some of that is just due to the criticism he gets that, like, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan, but, like, sometimes I see some of the stuff people say about him, and it's like, are you kidding me? Like, this is just whiny at this point. So that's pushing me more towards the Roman Reigns train. But, man, what a great angle. This shows you, again, we've talked about this on the show, that wrestling is not always about the athletic, young, quick, smaller guys in 2017. Sometimes the big guys have a role. And my God, this angle that they did, the backstage fight on Monday night, was tremendous.
You know what was good about it? What was great about it, I should say, and I noticed it, is that Raw especially falls into this trap when the show's laid out. Like, a segment happens. The show's plotted out. How many segments are there in Raw typically? Like, there's a specific,
12 to 15, something like that.
Yeah. There's like a specific number. And so, like, all the segments are very self-contained. Like, a segment happens, maybe they should review it after the break, but then it's over. And it's not really touched on. Like, it's just like a series of self-contained segments. This, like, very much, like, took over a portion of the show. And you don't see that often on Raw. And it felt important. Like, that really needs to be stated to me. Like, I was like, wow, they just keep going with this. They're not like, they're not just like moving on to the next thing. It kept going and going, and it felt like, it kind of, I'm trying to like think of like a comparison to it. I don't know. It kind of there was like obviously the Austin angle where he hijacked the ambulance when he beat up Bret Hart.
Oh yeah.
But, this just felt like, okay, this has taken over the show, and you very rarely get that with Raw these days, where it's just like, okay, a segment happened, maybe it was good, but it's over now, and we're on to the next thing. This kind of very much took over the show, and I liked that quite a bit.
Yeah, I want to get Justin's take here in a minute, but it's funny you said that, Kyle, because that's exactly what I thought when I was watching it. It was very similar to that Bret Austin Raw. It was like March or April of '97.
I think it was May or even maybe.
Yeah, sometime in the spring of '97.
Yeah.
But yeah, these guys, listen to the crowd response in the background. That crowd was just eating out of the palm of their hand. They loved everything. Every single one of these segments was just tremendous. So, Justin, what did you think of it on Monday night?
Loved it. Thought it was amazing. It did remind me of, and this is something wrestling fans kind of in general can only think in the short term. And I think me and Ryan are kind of to blame also in this, going back to Braun losing to Roman Reigns at the pay-per-view before WrestleMania. We were complaining because, like, oh, you build up Braun as this huge monster and you just have him lose on some meaningless pay-per-view. And it's a nice reminder that just because something like that happens, anybody can be rehabilitated into being a monster again.
Yes, very good point.
I think it was, Kyle, did you write on a news piece today on Top Rope Press about this could possibly be an ambulance match, the pay-per-view?
Yeah, yeah, it was. So that was just me speculating, because if you look now, first of all, WWE's working an angle where Roman's got a separated shoulder. So I don't know if they're going to do the match on Payback, which is weird because originally Meltzer said that was the planned main event for the show. And if they're not doing it, I guess that would make a little bit more sense why they've moved this Orton Wyatt thing, which we'll get into, I know, when we talk about the Super Stretch more, to Payback, because to me that like makes no sense why they would do that otherwise. But I mean, if they need a main event, then I guess there you go. But yeah, to me, if you watch an ambulance match, makes sense because we've heard they're going to do Strowman Lesnar. They teased it on the Raw after WrestleMania. And if you do an ambulance match, one, it's very natural based on the angle because it involved an ambulance. And B, an ambulance match allows Reigns to lose without getting pinned. So to me, that would make sense. They haven't done an ambulance match in a while, have they? Was the last one like Cena Kane?
It's years. It's been years.
Yeah, I can't remember if there's been one since then. There probably has been.
Oh, wait, didn't Bray and Dino do one? Or was that just Dean coming out of an ambulance?
They did. Bray and Dean did. They did a lot of gimmick matches, I remember. But you're right. They absolutely did. Bray and Dean was the last one.
Bunch of classics.
Yeah, I think that was on Raw, actually, Bray and Dean.
Yeah.
Because they did a TLC match at TLC, a pay-per-view that was here in Cleveland.
Well, yeah, Braun Strowman is a guy who's just really grown into his role so much in the last year. I mean, when they first brought him up in the Wyatt family, he was terrible. He was awful on Raw. And since then, he's very good for a big guy. He plays into his role perfectly. It's one of the highlights of the show every week.
He's looked very well ever since. I mean, he's clearly been one of the big winners post-brand extension. Because they booked him right from, with the squashing going back to Ellsworth. Remember that? James Ellsworth was his first squash match on Raw. He's been booked perfectly, basically, since the brand extension.
One more great thing about that segment is it led to a lot of really good United Airlines memes.
My God.
But okay, and this wasn't one of them, but I got to share it. But it is kind of wrestling related because it's Roddy Piper. There's a little ad. It says, United Airlines, we came here to sell seats and kick ass, and we're all out of seats.
My God, United Airlines, get it together. Did you hear the thing today? They had a scorpion fall on a guy's head and sting him. Came from the bag. Oh, yeah, legit.
How does that happen?
There was a flight from, I think, Houston to Calgary. I know it was to Calgary, I think from Houston. And a guy was on the flight, and from the overhead bin above on the carry-on section, a scorpion fell out and stung the guy. Holy Christ. United Airlines, what is going on?
I'll tell you what, man. O'Hare is the only place that I have had a flight canceled both ways on the same trip. When I went to Lollapalooza the last year I went, I can't remember, this was a few years ago, so more than 5 years ago probably. But yeah, I had my flight there canceled, and then I had my flight going back here to Cleveland canceled as well.
Quality experience at O'Hare Airport, where the L jumps the tracks and drives into people. Also, they've had some issues there. Yeah, I've enjoyed the memes too, though. I got to say. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, Braun Strowman to me, one of the highlights of Raw. So
what do we think? Do we think they're not going to do that match at Payback, and that Reigns they're going to sell this? I mean, oof.
They had the kayfabe story today about all the injuries he had. Did you guys see that?
Yeah, like a separated shoulder. That's what I'm saying. Like, are they really going to
be a rush, right?
Yeah, I mean,
but it would work.
I would Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it works into him getting beat and taking the L, and like how you mentioned that it keeps building up Braun for a possible match against Lesnar at SummerSlam.
But I wouldn't push. That angle was so hot. Like, yeah, okay, you want to sell the injuries, but man, if I'm WWE, I would want to take advantage of that and have that headline, because you can get away then with not having a title match. Like, because to me that match is pretty hot, and that angle was so good that could absolutely headline a pay-per-view. Those two.
That angle was so hot it was on fire, and next week Braun's going to tip over a fire truck.
Yeah, because I don't know what you do with Braun then if you're going to sell this Reigns injury. That seems odd to me. And the whole thing with moving Wyatt and Orton to a Payback having that match, which they don't even know what the hell it's going to be. I don't know. It seems like a lot of last second decisions were being made, with the superstar shakeup. I wanted to say this one thing. This is the other thing I thought about with that angle. I want to get this up. Are they going the Tommy Dreamer route with Roman Reigns to get him over as a babyface? Like, are they just going to have him take all this
crap kicked
punishment
out of him constantly?
and like it's going to be like the fans are going to finally respect him because he's hardcore. Like, he was taking those bumps. Like, is that what, like, so when watching that live and they kept going with it, I'm like, man, that's where they're going with this. They're doubling down on this. They want Reigns to be the babyface that a large portion of the crowd doesn't want him to be. And I think they think, in their infinite wisdom, well, if we go the Tommy Dreamer route, we can do this.
It's not going to work. The crowd loved it. Yeah, I thought that too. But the crowd loved it so much with what Strowman did to him that I don't think they're going to, like, all of a sudden get sentimental and start training.
Well, I'm not saying it's going to work, but I think
I know. Yeah.
Mentality. I think WWE thinks, okay, we can make Reigns this, he's hardcore kind of, like, that was how they got Tommy over in ECW. Like, he just like would take this unreal punishment, and eventually the fans were like, hey, you know what? Okay, we respect this guy.
Yeah.
And like, I think that's where they were going. Like, this is building to.
I think they knew it was going to get a reaction from both sides of them, like we've talked about for weeks now.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, initially, yeah. I mean, obviously, you don't change feelings in one night with one angle, no matter how good it is. But it'll be interesting moving forward if that's kind of how they do that with Reigns, where he takes a lot of bumps and stuff. He was bumping really well, by the way, that angle. That needs to be stated.
Yeah.
Like, he was bumping like a maniac, and he bumped well a few weeks ago when Reigns when Strowman hit him with that clothesline out of nowhere in that one angle. Remember that? And Reigns like rolled down the ramp. Reigns has been bumping like a madman for Strowman. Give him credit.
Go.
I mean, we've always said, even when I've talked about Reigns, maybe not being the guy and stuff, he's a way better worker than people give him credit for.
Oh yes, absolutely. There's no doubt about that.
So, I don't know. You guys mentioned the WWE title match with Orton and Wyatt. Let's transition to the superstar shakeup with that. So they moved the Wyatt-Orton match to Raw's pay-per-view. I mean, talk about telegraphing the finish. Obviously not going to have Bray Wyatt, who's now in Raw, win the title and bring SmackDown's world title to Raw, right? Unless they're thinking of combining the two world titles. I guess that's the only way.
Or see, Lesnar being the Universal Champion is such a wild card because Raw has this part-time world champion. And I was thinking about, like, man, what if could they do it and leave SmackDown with no world champion? Maybe. I don't know. I feel like, to me, the overarching storyline in my head when I think of them moving that match up a couple weeks, up a full pay-per-view, is they weren't happy with that storyline, the way it's played out. And that has been, I'll defend WWE against things when I think people are unfairly criticizing it, but I think that storyline's been pretty weak overall. The Orton Wyatt thing, it just hasn't worked, and it seems like they just kind of want to blow it off. And as much as I haven't liked it, though, I don't know if I agree with this decision in the sense that if you knew what this House of Horrors match was going to be, you can play that up, and because I don't know what the headliner is going to be for Backlash, which is SmackDown's first only pay-per-view. I mean, it can't be a U.S. title match between AJ Styles and Kevin Owens, can it?
You wouldn't think so, but I mean, Kevin Owens, AJ Styles, that should be a world title feud. And you wrote in your SmackDown review this week, Kyle, that it's pretty much becoming clear, and we talked about it for weeks before WrestleMania, that what a horrible decision it would be to make Randy Orton the SmackDown World Champion. And it's becoming clear that was the wrong decision. And you got AJ Styles winning a U.S. title #1 contendership match. Why? I don't know.
Well, I do like how they made the second, because we bitch about this all the time, and maybe it's too little too late, but I do like when they build the secondary titles up, and they did a good job with the U.S. title, making that the focus. But at the same time, it made me realize, man, they hardly hyped that House of Horrors match at all on SmackDown. They don't even know what it is, reportedly. I mean, they're sending out surveys to fans. What do you want this match to be? Why don't you tell us? What
You want it to be WCW-esque?
Yeah. And it's just like, God, like, you just come up with this. You don't even know what it's going to be. Like, that's something that, I mean, it'll be goofy. And that worries me a little bit. But if you have an idea what this match is, you hype it for a few weeks. That's a pay-per-view headliner easily. You can build interest in that. Even as much as I think it was the Orton's champion's the wrong decision, it'll drum up interest. But man, I just don't know. I don't know about this decision to move it up to the Raw pay-per-view, unless if they're not doing Braun Strowman. In that case, then Payback did need a headlining match and whatever.
Well, I wanted to get you guys' take on who you think won the roster shakeup here. So in summary, SmackDown got Owens or Jericho, depending on who wins their match for the U.S. title, but obviously that's probably going to be Kevin Owens.
Well, I think Owens is on SmackDown regardless, and it's, well, if Jericho wins, he's here too.
Okay.
To kind of cover for the fact that we all kind of know Jericho's not winning.
So we got the beardless Kevin Owens.
Yes.
I guess he's got like a 5 o'clock shadow going. We got Charlotte, New Day, Rusev, Lana, Sami Zayn, the Shining Stars, Sin Cara, Jinder Mahal, and Tamina. And then
Jinder.
Oh God, Jinder. We're going to talk about Jinder because of the Finn Balor injury here in a minute. Raw got Miz and Maurice, Dean Ambrose, Bray Wyatt, Alexa Bliss, Mickie James, Apollo Crews, Kalisto, Heath Slater and Rhino, and Kurt Hawkins. So I just want to have like a brief roundtable here on who you guys think made out the best here, because to me, long term, it's hard to tell, because when we were doing the show last summer and we had the original brand split, we talked about it. I was like, wow, SmackDown seemed to have gotten the short end of the stick, but it ended up being the better show. We talked about this off air. Now, this wasn't part of the official roster shakeup, but SmackDown also got Shinsuke Nakamura, obviously, called up from NXT. So you got to factor that in. But who do you guys think made out better here long term, SmackDown or Raw? Let's start with Justin. Justin, what do you think?
I think 100% SmackDown. I think the guys that they got leads to fresher possible feuds and matches. I mean, just think, we got Styles, Owens, Nakamura, Zayn. I mean, Styles, Owens, and Zayn would be in my top 5 workers, period, in the company. But you mix, and then you look at what Raw has, and I don't know if there's as much there to entice me. Plus, they have so many top guys that they can easily get lost in the mix. Or I just think SmackDown has a better opportunity to stay fresh.
All right, Kyle.
I think SmackDown is losing both Miz and Wyatt leaves them weak on the heel side. I don't know if, there was some speculation that maybe Wyatt was a last-minute decision, because there had been talk that AJ Styles was moving to Raw. And Styles, it's interesting because if he's the feud with Owens, are they doing heel, or are they turning Styles babyface? Because if they turn Styles babyface, then SmackDown is super weak on the heel side. It's basically Owens and Baron Corbin as your top heels.
Styles?
Well, no, I'm saying if you turn Styles babyface.
Oh, sorry, gotcha.
Yeah, if you turn Styles babyface for that feud, then I mean, that leaves them really weak. And they it's funny, we had talked about before the shakeup, okay, maybe you turn Styles babyface to kind of be the guy, the 1A face on the brand when Cena's not around. Well, Nakamura fills that role now, in my opinion. And there is Randy Orton, who, by the way, is your champion. So
Rusev.
Yeah, Rusev when he comes back can be, and I noted in the review, I think that was the kind of the underrated acquisition for SmackDown. I think Rusev will have a lot of room to grow on that brand, and that's very good for him because he was lost in the shuffle on Raw. So I call it a wash, to be honest with you. When you include Nakamura, not only the Nakamura call up, but Ty Dillinger as well, who's popular. I think it was a wash. I don't think there's any griping that needs to be done. Again, okay, I see why they would move Wyatt, because with this storyline with Orton, it's kind of hard to have them on the same brand now if they're not feuding, because they went all out with it. So it's not like that would be without precedent if they did leave him on the same brand and just kind of ignore that history. But, Miz, I was kind of sad to see go. But Ambrose was a right move to move brands because he had actually in a year he had basically worked with everybody on SmackDown. So I was not shocked at all that Ambrose left. And then when Ambrose left, you knew Owens was coming over because they're not going to have both secondary champions. So no, I call it a wash. I call it a complete wash.
Yeah, I've had a hard time with this. With Justin's point with the fresh matchups, I definitely see that. I see guys on SmackDown that like the internet wrestling community wants to see succeed, like Sami Zayn, for example, that they can get a better shake. Like I think Sami Zayn's really going to be invigorated by his move to SmackDown.
Well, they beat him on that first show, though.
Yeah, but I think long term he'll be good. But like Kyle was saying, SmackDown lost some important guys, and I feel like SmackDown lost a lot from the top of their card. Like Miz was one of the best things on SmackDown. Dean Ambrose always has his following. Alexa Bliss, arguably like the best thing going in the women's division recently. Other than Charlotte, those two are definitely the best things going. I thought Alexa, by the way, on Raw was awesome. I thought her in the ring with Bayley and Sasha. I can't believe I'm saying this because I love those two also, but man, I thought Alexa came out like the better performer, at least in the promo segment.
Well, yeah, I mean Sasha's strength has never been promos.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Especially with especially cutting baby. She's bad at cutting babyface promos.
But Alexa's been getting a lot better in the ring, and as a personality and like charisma wise,
yeah, her facial expressions are very good. She plays her character well.
So I feel like SmackDown lost a lot of the top performers on their show.
The issue is with SmackDown, they had fewer main eventers. I mean, there was they only had like 6 top guys, and 3 of them moved, and Cena's not around. So the only mainstays are Styles and Corbin, if you wanted to consider him a main guy. And he was kind of knocking on that door, but I don't know if he's officially a top guy yet. So that's kind of like the only holdovers, whereas Raw had Reigns stay, Strowman stay, Rollins stay. So
that's part of the intrigue of SmackDown for me, though, is they are going to have to make some stars. They're going to have to pick up some of these other guys. Yeah. Whereas we know who's going to be headlining Raw for the next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We don't know that with SmackDown.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So I think I'm intrigued by SmackDown, and if I didn't factor in Shinsuke Nakamura, I would say overall for sure Raw won here. But when you factor in Nakamura, who's one of the best performers in the company, and obviously the most over guy in SmackDown already, like Kyle wrote in his review this week. I don't know. I see Kyle's point with it being a wash. I think on the surface, I think Raw maybe benefited a little bit more, but long term, SmackDown might be in a better position.
SmackDown should be happy with Nakamura, and they're going to get Cena back. I don't know if Cena's going to. He probably won't work again until SummerSlam, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but when he comes back, that's always a big deal.
They actually pulled him from the SummerSlam advertising, I guess.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
I mean, I have heard it is going to be a light 2017 for John Cena.
Yeah,
in WWE, a very light, even lighter than it was in 2016. So, wow! I assume they would at least have him back for the big show. So that's pretty interesting. I was surprised. So when they announced the whole shakeup and they did the Orton Wyatt thing, right? To get back to that, I had assumed, okay, they're going to blow that off. I had assumed it was going to be Orton and AJ working a world title program because, they had that good match on SmackDown it was probably a few months ago back at this point, maybe a few weeks, month, whatever.
Yeah.
And it clearly, the way that match was worked, where they didn't do a lot of the big moves, it was clearly to me set up for, okay, these guys are working down the line. So I'm a little surprised, and I would still expect those two to do a world title program, right?
You would think, unless they're going to move Nakamura right away there.
Yeah, so. I mean, that's the question. So let's say Orton retains against Wyatt. Who is your world title contender for Backlash? Assuming that they do Styles Orton as the U.S. Styles Owens, as the U.S. title match.
Corbin? I mean, they want Orton to be the face, so he needs a top heel.
Yeah, I'd say Corbin.
Yeah, really.
I don't see any
I'm a
other
big
options.
Baron
Like you
back.
said, they're light on the heel side.
To me, Baron still needs to be winning. He shouldn't be losing world title matches. He should be winning against guys, against mid-card fodder is what he should be doing right now.
So what if Baron Corbin? I have heard that Corbin's going to get a world title push this year. What if Corbin wins the title and he's the transition to Nakamura winning it?
I'm okay with that.
I could see that because you got the King of Strong Style. Corbin's like a hard hitter. So they have a pretty physical match. I don't think Corbin would have the belt long, but maybe they don't want Nakamura to beat Orton.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like you said, the top of the card is kind of thin, and it's definitely thin on the heel side. So,
yeah,
it's
I don't know. What was that?
I said, but it's intriguing.
Yeah. Payback, by the way, is going to be a loaded show potentially.
Yeah.
To me, I mean, because you're going to add Rollins and Joe. That's like a lock. Bayley is defending. To me, that's got to be like a major match. By the way, Bayley defending in her hometown, and potentially Sasha turning on her. Mm-hmm. That's got to be a major featured match on that card.
Yeah.
So, I don't think they'll close with it, but they could. I mean, if it had been built right, but I feel like they've kind of dragged their feet a little bit with only 2 weeks. I don't know if they have enough time to make it, the kind of the deal they did with Sasha and Charlotte. So,
Well,
hey,
yeah, go ahead,
quick,
Justin.
I was just going to say, for me, my biggest winner individually is Kalisto getting over to Raw and getting in with those cruiserweights. I just wanted to mention that real quick.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that was a spot for him. God, was it 2 years ago? Kalisto was getting a lot of hype. Maybe it was last year. I don't even remember. But
it was. Remember, he was having good matches with Ryback.
Yeah, and they just kind of abandoned him recently.
Certainly
so I think
notable. Yeah,
I think he's just another guy that can really shine in the cruiserweight division
too. That worthless dog.
Oh man, Alberto Del Rio. Yeah, that's a whole other topic. So speaking of everyone's favorite wrestler, not Alberto Del Rio, but Justin's favorite wrestler, Finn Balor, reportedly suffered a concussion Monday night with Jinder Mahal, who is no longer on Raw. So luckily he can no longer injure Finn Balor in any upcoming matches. Finn Balor, you guys feel like he's going to be kind of left out of the shuffle for a while, or?
I was wondering, it's funny that you mentioned that. So after Raw was over, and I'm figuring out where they go with Finn on Payback, I couldn't come up with anything, Justin.
Well, it looked like they're going to start something with Bray Wyatt.
Yeah, but that clearly they have to wait for Bray to work Orton, though, at that pay-per-view. So, I mean, Finn can't work Bray.
It looks like he's going to be out for a month anyways, so.
Okay, wow.
I mean, if he's actually concussed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, man, watching that, it's like he did have that glazed look in his eye, and some of his moves were a little bit more molasses than usual.
I saw some Twitter comments like, "Oh, Finn Balor, God, he must be made of glass because he's already injured again." It's like, dude, he got knocked in the face full bore by a guy who looks to be chemically enhanced, Jinder Mahal. I mean, like, what do you expect? This is not the guy made of glass.
Mahal. Have you guys been privy to this Jinder Mahal debate on Twitter?
Refresh me on this one.
Like, people have been like hyping Jinder Mahal like crazy in the last week.
I've seen some hate on him because of injuring Balor.
What's that?
I've seen some hate on him for injuring Balor.
I've seen some other ways. Like, people are like, this Jinder Mahal is a very underrated enhancement talent.
Oh my! Did you see the boot he gave to Balor in that match? Like early in the match, the miss by like a foot.
No.
Oh, it was terrible, horrible.
Jinder Mahal, I'll tell you, he's in line. He's a guy who might be pushed on SmackDown. Maybe, maybe he's going to be a top guy. Maybe he challenges Randy Orton.
Oofta.
I mean, he looks a lot better cosmetically than he did a couple years ago. But work-wise, I'm not sure.
Over that body. I did see someone had a funny tweet. Vince Jr. is really losing it when the 175-pound guy is beating a guy who looks like Jinder Mahal. Vince. Vince isn't making the key. He's really changed his tune. Can you imagine that? I mean, seriously, if you've been a long-time wrestling fan, you talk about how things have changed. Think about Finn Balor squashing Jinder Mahal based on the history of WWE. Like, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's true. Balor definitely doesn't have the size traditionally that they push, but I don't know.
I don't like, by the way, was that you who tweeted this, Justin? I'm assuming about not liking the prospect of a Finn Balor Bray Wyatt feud. Was that you who tweeted?
I tweeted that I was pro that.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't know how hot I am on that feud.
Well, I'm big on it because I'm a Finn Balor fan, and there's no way you don't beat Bray Wyatt because he is completely neutered now.
See, that's why it doesn't excite me. Like, because it's going to build to the Demon King. And, like, I guess that's cool, but it's pretty, like, let's talk about Bray Wyatt.
Okay, real quick, and I agree with you. I'm just trying to make myself feel better about it because it is effing meaningless now because of what they've done to Bray Wyatt.
Okay, let's talk about Bray Wyatt. Am I crazy in saying that this guy should be turned babyface?
100% he should be.
Okay, because to me, he is so dead end in this heel role. He loses every top feud he's in. Apparently, he's going to lose it again to Orton. Again, let's let it play out. I don't know. Maybe they're going to do something crazy, have him beat Orton. SmackDown. The U.S. title is going to be the big thing on SmackDown. But, it just seems like his heel character kind of bores me. And if you go back, I've noted this before in this program, Ryan. I know you remember this. If you watch the TV before he got hurt last year, they did some stuff where, like, he confronted Triple H when Triple H was champion going into WrestleMania 32, and the crowd went crazy for him. And then the match where his last TV match before he got hurt, he teamed with Roman.
Yep.
And they were building to a babyface turn, it seemed. And then they totally abandoned it when he came back. They just programmed the Wyatts with the New Day or something. I really, really think Bray Wyatt needs to be a babyface.
That match with Reigns has the greatest GIF of all time, which I'm going to tweet it right now on the Top Rope Nation podcast. Okay. So everybody go check it out.
Who else remembers that?
At TR Nation Podcast. Give us a follow. Yeah, I agree. The heel Wyatt thing has been played out for a couple of years now.
And it's rare to say this, because, the guys, turn all the time, in modern WWE, but he's been a heel now for what? Obviously this Bray Wyatt thing goes to NXT, but,
3 years now, 3.5.
Yeah,
4 years.
His first Mania was 30 when he worked Cena, and he'd come up a little bit before that.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're talking about he's been, he's had a nice 3-year heel run. I mean, even in the old days, that was kind of a long time.
Yeah. Well, getting back to Balor, I just wanted to mention, because we talked about how we don't know where he's going. And, in the traditional wrestling sense, Finn Balor is the guy who never lost the Universal title.
Yes.
And he comes back and he's going to be in a mid-card feud. He's not going after the Universal title. You got Lesnar off TV for weeks. It just kind of defies logic. I mean,
yes, I think it is so weird that they're not addressing it. It's like an elephant in the room. It's like, okay, if you're Finn Balor's character and you gave this title up, isn't that what you're going after?
Yeah.
And they really haven't even said anything. Now, I will say, did they note it? Because there was a vignette they played. And I'll be honest with you, I was fast-forwarding through Raw, and I kind of fast-forwarded through. Did they even note, him going after the title in that, or was that not even touched upon?
I don't remember. I know they mentioned the week before when he came back and he was teaming with Rollins. They did mention on commentary, which was good, by the way, because usually continuity is not good in WWE. But they did mention or Michael Cole was talking about now he's teaming with Seth Rollins, who is the guy who injured him. He's the first ever Universal Champion, and he had to hand over the belt because of the injury. So they did mention how their teaming was a bit awkward, but I don't remember this week.
Yeah, I mean it's so weird with this, with Lesnar as the part-time champion. No one's really talking about I want Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they did it with Strowman, but man, you would think that there's a lot of guys who would, that would kind of be their angle, and they seem a little directionless, but particularly Finn.
Well, like Justin and I said on the show, Goldberg Lesnar should not have been for the title.
Only because Lesnar's a bad endgame.
Oh, it's true. Yeah, that's true.
Brock Lesnar, can I just say this right now?
Oh, God.
Where is this going? Oh, God, here we go.
How overrated is this guy?
My
Like,
God.
people bitch of, like, all the bitching about Goldberg that took place from the usual crowd.
There's
Like, Goldberg's run, at least, was, like, pretty brief, right? Like, Brock Lesnar has been around for a while, and he's got this sweetheart deal, and let's just call a spade a spade. He doesn't deliver on that sweetheart deal. Like,
okay.
given what he gets, there's no spike when Brock Lesnar shows up on these pay-per-views or Raw. Like the Raws that he's on, they don't like draw like. There's no huge rating spike for him.
Well, it's. I think part of it is the way he's been booked. As Ryan's pointed out in the past, is this guy can do more than just Suplex City. It's just that's the corner they've put him in.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a bad
Rock in
gimmick.
the corner.
It's a terrible gimmick.
It's funny. I had these casuals that they're trying to, bring back in with Lesnar and such, right? I had a buddy who I was stunned when I came home and talked to him. He's like, "Yeah, I subscribe to WWE Network to watch WrestleMania." I was shocked by this person. I mean, he's come over and watched a few shows with me, but he's like, "Well, it was free. I took advantage of the free month." I'm like, "Okay." But he's like, this Suplex City thing is dumb. I'm like, that's very interesting.
Yeah, his matches are so boring. Like Justin said, he can do so much. This is a guy who could do a shooting star press off the top rope.
Well, he's not going to do.
He's not going to do it now, but he could do it. I mean,
He wants to, though. He's got this. Look, with the booking, I'll say this right now. His first year was poor. He should not have lost that first match to John Cena.
Yeah.
And he should not have lost at WrestleMania to Triple H. That feud just went on too long in general. Then it should have been like a one-match feud, not a three-match feud like they made it. But, man, he has not done anything remotely interesting since losing the title at WrestleMania 31, to me. Yeah, he had the rematch with The Undertaker, and I guess that there was a couple good angles there. But, man, that Dean Ambrose feud sucked. And, honestly, if it wasn't for Bill Goldberg, Jesus, where would this guy be? I mean, that Shane McMahon feud, that was going to be interesting? No.
I just think he's been booked into a corner. I think the Suplex City stuff, he has to do it.
And doesn't deliver. I don't know. I just don't think I think it's a mistake to have him as the champion.
I think there's something to be said that he's just comfortable doing what he's doing. He's getting paid a massive paycheck, and he's not going to go beyond that. But I also think the booking's part of it. They got the T-shirt, Suplex City. They got the promos with Heyman constantly using that tagline. That's how he's been built up. I'm sure he's told from people above.
Are kind of boring. And I love Paul Heyman, but it's the same effing thing.
Yeah, I'm sure he's told, though, like he has to have the German suplex spots in his match, which really hamper his match quality. Because at this point, like years later, do we really need to see 95% of a Brock Lesnar match being German suplexes over and over and punches on the ground, and that's about it? Yeah, one time, exactly.
It was the Royal Rumble match, the three-way with Cena and Rollins. It was really cool. But I don't know, man. Brock Lesnar, to me, is one of the most boring characters in WWE.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. And I'm a guy who really likes Brock Lesnar, but man, he is not interesting. And he is not the guy that should be champion. That's for sure.
Okay, but let's go beyond looking at it. So there's no denying that as a draw, he may be the greatest draw in UFC history. Okay.
Yeah.
But is he a great pro wrestling draw? If you go back to his first run, the one WrestleMania he worked on top, 19 in Seattle, is like the only modern WrestleMania that nosedived at the box office.
Yeah, I mean, he was gone for such a long time. He was on top after the Attitude Era died down. Mm-hmm. He wasn't. The business wasn't particularly hot at that time, although viewership wise, they were doing a lot bigger numbers than they are now in 2003.
that one I mean, you know it. I mean, you study the numbers. WrestleMania 19 has these like incredibly low numbers. Like WrestleMania has always been pretty steady when if you like group like a 4-year, and like 20 like jumped way up, 18 was way, like 19 just did this inexplicable nosedive. And
this is why I will never give two shits about numbers, is because I actually loved WrestleMania 19.
Oh no, the show was great.
See, I
think
I have a good cop, bad cop relationship with that show. If you watch it like just self-contained, and like in a vacuum, it does come across as like pretty big time, especially like the big stars on it compared to maybe today or something. But Jesus Christ, the booking was horrible in 2000.
Well, Triple H should not have beat Booker T.
Yeah,
that match should not have been made, because Booker T was not. Here's the thing you have to remember: old Bill Goldberg was coming in, and that was the plan, was to put Goldberg over Triple H. And I'll absolutely listen to you that RVD or Booker T was more deserving of the quickie title reign than was Shawn Michaels in that era. But I actually didn't think Booker T should have won that match. I just don't think the match should have been made.
It was just so bizarre the way the match was built up, and he was just like emasculated.
Yes.
And he didn't get his revenge.
No, it was very bad. That's what I'm saying. The match shouldn't have been made. Like, if your goal is not to put Booker T over in that spot, then the match should not happen.
Yeah.
Like that should have been Kevin Nash doing that then. If you just kind of want to build a baby face up for a Mania title match he's going to lose, it should have been Kevin Nash. Who they went with for the first Raw pay-per-view, which is mind-boggling. But God, people complain about booking nowadays in WWE. The booking nowadays is so much better than it was in 2003. 2003 and 2002 were two of the most pathetically booked years in this company's history.
You don't have to tell me. I was at the famous Raw show where they did the HLA angle with your favorite Eric Bischoff. So you don't have to tell me about late 2002 WWE booking. It was
God, how bad was Raw in that era?
Justin sent me an email. I remember very vividly because we were working together at the time. Justin sent me an email after that show because he knew I was there, and he was like, "That was one of the worst Raws I've ever seen in my life." Yeah, and my car died going to the arena, which made it that much worse of an experience.
Yeah, I just think Brock Lesnar doesn't deliver on that sweetheart deal. I mean, what he's paid for, I mean, you're right. He hasn't. I don't think he was ever booked to his full potential upon the return. But God, you have that sweetheart deal like he has, and yeah, okay, that first SummerSlam he worked against Triple H, that did a surprisingly good number. But God, I mean, when was the last time Brock Lesnar like delivered good numbers? And he should, given what he's paid.
Yeah.
I think this gimmick with him as the champion, I would take Roman Reigns as the Universal Champion any day of the week over Brock Lesnar.
Well, it might be weeks till we see Brock Lesnar from the sounds of it. It might be late May or early June.
Yeah, that's what they're talking about. Yeah, June or July.
At the very earliest. But one thing I can tell you, it's not going to be weeks until you see us again, because we're coming at you every week, guys, Top Rope Nation. Here on YouTube, we are on Stitcher Radio, TopRopePress.com, Podbean, and of course iTunes. If you guys are listening on iTunes, subscribe, leave us a rating. It helps us out. It takes you 2 seconds. Also, we got t-shirts over at ProWrestlingTees.com/TopRopePress. And so you can pick up one of those. I think they're $20 or something. Helps the show out. It's a good looking t-shirt. Check it out. You see it here on the screen right now. So with that being said, any closing thoughts, guys, before we sign off this week?
Yeah, it looks like Seth Rollins is working on a new finisher, and I think it looks dope. It looks like it's going to be a version of the Rainmaker where he brings in the high knee instead of a clothesline.
I like it. I like it because it has the history with like what he did to John Cena, breaking his nose.
Yeah. Knees to faces.
That's right. Kyle.
I think Jinder Mahal has got the stiffest finisher in the game right now.
Justin is sobbing right now to his glass of whiskey.
You talk about elbows to faces. Jinder Mahal puts you on the shelf, man.
Veins to faces.
Jinder frickin' Mahal. This guy is tough.
All right, guys. Hey, thanks for tuning in to episode 34 of Top Rope Nation, and we'll be back with you next week. Check us out at TR Nation Podcast on Twitter. 95% of the tweets come from Mr. Justin Joint. You will enjoy them. At TRP Kyle, at Historical Ryan, at Joint 319. topropepress.com. We'll check.
Sorry
you
for
guys
the light.
We'll check you guys next week.